Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Lane One Making Waves. This week on the podcast, we have Olympic gold medalist, civil rights attorney, and tireless advocate for gender equity, Nancy Hogshead. From winning gold in the pool to fighting for Title IX and the rights of women and marginalized athletes, Nancy's story is one of resilience, leadership, and relentless pursuit of justice. In this episode, we talk about her early swimming career, her personal journey into advocacy, and the changes that she's championing to creating a safer, more equitable space for all involved in sport. Before we begin, a quick content warning. This episode does include discussion of sexual violence between the 27-minute mark to the 31-minute mark. If this topic is difficult for you, please feel free to skip that section and continuing to listen to the rest of the conversation. This interview is very powerful and very important. So with that, let's dive in. I am here today with Nancy Hogshead. Nancy has such an extensive history in the sport of swimming, but that does not even touch what she has done in her professional life as well. So I'd like to touch a little bit on your background in the sport of swimming. So what initially inspired you to start swimming and more specifically pursue it at that competitive level?
Well, my very first coach was drumroll Eddie Reese, who just is trying to retire, but doesn't seem like he's doing a very good at University of Texas, right? But he was probably 22, 23 years old, and he was just as funny then as he is now. And he used to call me Nanuka the Bazooka because
Oh,
I
wow.
like to talk a lot. And Eddie did what now experts say is kind of how you transition somebody into sport. I got started when I was 7. My parents bought a boat. They just wanted to drown proof me and my siblings so that, we could swim a mile onto shore if we needed
Mhm.
to, if something happened. They're from Iowa. They're very risk averse. So with Eddie, I got a very good sense of the water and the feel of the water. We did not grind it out. We played a lot of foursquare and we had a lot of fun with our peers. And yeah, so that's how I got started. And you better interrupt me or you better sort of interact. Otherwise, I can kind of go. But when I was 11, my family moved from Gainesville, Florida to Jacksonville, Florida.
Mhm.
And in Gainesville, that was Eddie Reese. And I should say one more thing. My mom said to Eddie, "Hey, look, Nancy's really close to breaking the 10 under record. I bet if you push her, I bet she can do it." And he
Yeah.
said, "If I push her, she will quit swimming."
Mhm.
So I never broke the record and I did keep swimming. And, here we are. So when I was 11, we moved and my dad was associated with the Episcopal Church.
Okay.
So I had to go to Episcopal High School here in Jacksonville, Florida. And there was another great coach, his brother, Randy Reese, who is also still coaching. And we actually just raised money to get the pool that I swam in named after him.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. But if you know Randy, it was a whole nother story.
Yep.
It was not about, just having fun. We really, really worked hard.
Mhm.
And at one point, I think, so a couple things happened. Like, when you're making that transition from fun and games to being dedicated to the sport.
Yeah.
So I think Randy would agree that he tried to move me up onto the A team a little too early. I was so much younger than everybody else. And it
Mhm.
was obvious to the other teammates that I was his favorite. And some of them might disagree. But, you know, Randy grabbed me by the back of my arm, and anybody who's been coached by him understands, right? But,
Mhm.
grabbed me. It was like, Nancy, if you want to be great, you can be great, but you're going to have to do it, and it's going to be you. And you need to come to practice and not miss practice. You need to work hard while you're here. You need to be prepared to be here, etc. Um, so so that was, and I look back on those years and I don't know, frankly, how I stayed in the sport. I got bullied a lot by my much older teammates. And but I did. Stayed in swimming, and there's just something, and somewhere I don't know if you agree, but there's something about the art of being in the water.
Yes.
Of there's a connection, I should say, with yourself and your body and God and the universe, right? It is a beautiful thing. So I think
Yes.
that really helped me get over a lot of those.
Yeah, and it's something I didn't even realize until later on in life. I would even say until I was done with the sport, how connected to the water we actually are. I was doing some errands the other day and I was like, wow, it's been a long time since I've been in the water and I just had this craving and this calling. I was like, I want to be submerged. It can be an ocean, it can be a lake, it can be a pool. I was like, but my body and my mind was just craving being in the water. And I was like, this is such a weird feeling because I didn't even realize that that may have been what it was from such a young age. But you
Yeah.
touched on so many important things there. I think one of the ones is making sure you're having fun from a young age, but also you have to have that moment where someone kind of pulls you in and is like, you can do this. And it is true. Like you need a coach and you need a mentor and you need those support systems behind you. But at the end of the day, it's you. Whether you show up, whether you give 100% in practice, whether you're eating healthy, whether you're going to bed on time, those are decisions that you have to make. And there's so many athletes out there that kind of just want to show up to practice and then leave, but it's your whole life. And so a lot of people aren't really ready for that. And it seems like you got really prepared for that at such a young age. I mean, you broke an American record when you were 14. I know we boycotted the 1980 Olympics, but then you went in 1984 and had a remarkable time there in California, which they're going to be back not this year, but in 3 years, which I'm excited for. And so you won three Olympic gold medals, one silver medal. What was the most defining moment for you, do you think, from your time at the Olympics?
Good question. So many of them. And uh, okay, so I'll start with when we went into the Olympic Village, and you know how, I don't know if you were this way, but like we didn't carry our own luggage. Not that we were spoiled, but you got to save it for the water. My
Mhm.
mom used to say all the time, "You are so strong, and it is so worthless." Because like can't mow the lawn, mom, or can't,
Tapering.
exactly, right? So we had everything that every swim manufacturer made times 10. And so we had this ton of luggage that we were carrying, and everybody dropped it in the middle once we got into the Olympic Village, and we were dancing all around. I would say a good half of us were 1980 Olympians that didn't get to go. So this was our first time of being there, and just this, it was a real let go moment. That it was, you know, it was this unplanned celebratory moment that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
So that was a really great one. Another one was, my parents are phenomenal parents, and they paid for it. And back then, you had to have, they made it happen. They figured out who the other kids were to draw, but like swimming was never their gig. They weren't interested in swimming. I couldn't talk about it in practice. Oh, I did this descending set of 200 flies. They would have no idea what a feat that was.
Yeah.
But, um, again, they made my dream possible, even though it wasn't theirs. So
Hmm.
I give them time. So this was the first swim meet they had been to in probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And so, when they blow the whistle
Yeah.
and right? And everybody gets quiet. Not my parents,
Oh
right?
no.
Right now, oh my God.
That
So,
is so funny. Oh
isn't
my
it?
goodness.
So I loved this. Thank God it was prelims, so I
Yeah.
could tell them like, no, we're not doing that. So
Mhm.
then, and so that was a really great thing. And then after I was all done, you're living in this cocoon in this very sheltered world. So me and a friend, we wanted to go to Disneyland, and like these cops saw me, police officers, and they said, "Hey, where do you want to go?" And I was like, "Well, we were thinking about going to Disney World." And they're like, "Get in the car." And they turned on the lights and the sirens. And then everybody kept saying to us over and over again from all over the world, "You really did it for us. Wow, thanks. Wow." That was so, and people that I knew were not swimmers, and they were still grateful for like getting to watch the best of humanity, getting to watch somebody. Whenever you watch anybody that's had their 10,000 hours, whether it's art or acting or being an astronaut or right, whatever it is, when they have their 10,000 hours, it is a beautiful thing to watch. And I think that's why the Olympics are so great to watch and just so fulfilling for other people to feel like they're a part of,
Yeah.
because you're watching the best of the best of the best.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something I think even more to say when you're an athlete and you're watching the Olympics, or you're someone who is close to an athlete because you understand everything that has gone into that moment. I always say when I watched my brother swim in Paris, I was like, I'm a crier. I get a little bit emotional, especially when I see other people swim. Like, I'll cry for you. Um, so I immediately just started tearing up, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, like you're so happy he won." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm happy he won, but it's more so like you see everything that goes into it." And so, I mean, if it wasn't my brother, I'd cry for another athlete because it's just you understand. And so there's a level of respect that we have for each other, and the Olympics is just this shining moment where like everyone can come together and celebrate all of the things that they've done for, I mean, 8 years for some just because of the boycott. So I can't even imagine the emotions and that experience and what it was like for you to compete and be there.
Right, when you even when you just mentioned your brother, like I got a little choked up, like I right. So watching your brother swim and really not knowing his backstory or anything, but um it is it's so moving.
Yeah.
It is like any great piece of art or anything that somebody's got their 10,000 hours in.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get chills. I get goosebumps when I listen to music. I like you kind of just feel it. And it's something that you can't really explain to other people unless you're with someone who also kind of just feels it.
Yeah,
Um,
have you ever been to a Taylor Swift concert?
I haven't. I've watched them. I went to a bachelorette party for one of my college roommates, and we watched the concert in our little Airbnb. But I mean, I could feel it from even just watching the live stream of it.
Right, right. I mean, there is, when you watch somebody who's sort of transcendent, who really um moves beyond the technical.
Mhm.
um yeah, it's just utterly,
Speechless. It's amazing.
yeah, speechless, stunning. Yeah, right.
Looking back at your swimming career, what do you think was the most valuable lesson you learned from competing at the highest level?
Work hard,
Hmm.
work hard. That if you have dreams of what it is that you want to do, they just stay in your head unless you're willing to put the work in.
Hmm.
So whatever it is, and I think in sports it's a little, I'm gonna say this is gonna sound weird, it's a little bit easier than as a lawyer, because in sports there really is a time that if you do any more you're going to hurt yourself. You're
Hmm.
not going to go forward, you're going to go backwards, right?
Yeah.
And so to know where you're always making sure that you're not, I call it tipping over. right? So that you're not going to get sick, you're not going to get injured.
Mhm.
As opposed to in real life, in being a lawyer, is you know, um, I can. I'm a night owl naturally, but pulling an all-nighter and it's just nowhere near as cut and dry as to what you can and cannot do, right? There's such a great, you kind of learn what the line is in sport, but it's harder to see things like burnout or whatnot. For me, it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 62 years old and I'm still like, you know, should I,
Like,
should
should
I
I
kick it off my
keep?
right? Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I understand that. Like you said, in swimming, it's kind of like you know your body and you know when something is off or when you need to take a break, rather, or when you need to push through. So you kind of know that innate boundary, especially from being in the sport for so long. But when you do transition to your professional life and your brain is constantly on, or at least mine is, what can I do better? What can I go back at? There's always something that I can do. It is difficult to kind of take that step back and be like, okay, maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I should just set it down. But then I always just come back because it's always just right here.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, if you really love what you do, as I do, then, it just makes it that much harder. I can kind of sense, Summer, that you're one of those
Yeah,
that,
because it doesn't feel like work at the end of the day because I mean swimming to me never felt like work either. It was something that I loved to do. And so I am very blessed to where I can say I don't think I've ever really worked. It's just kind of happened that I'm able to pursue things that I am passionate about that I keep coming back to.
well, okay, good for you. And I'm glad you're of that ilk that, but just for the listeners out there, I
Yeah.
did not always feel that. I always went through a period like in like October, November, when you're back then in particular, when we were grinding it out.
Yes.
And let me just backstep 1 second. So my peers who have gone into coaching instead of the law, people like David Marsh and these other amazing coaches now, say that I swam at the wrong time, meaning that we just grinded, right? When I look at, I went to Olympic trials with Donna Deverona, and the athletes look happier. Their push off game is next level. They're underwater. The different types of strokes that they have. The is just so in my era, my primary memory of growing up was that I was tired, that I was exhausted. And so um and one of the main questions that I get, even from like, 7, 8, 9, when you go and you talk to schools or whatever, and they always, didn't you ever want to quit? And
Mhm.
of course I wanted to quit, but number one is sort of keeping what you want out there in front of you, and two is having that support system of people, and I still need that support system. Frankly, I'm getting a lot out of getting to talk with you here today as a support person for what it is that Champion Women does. um, it is, people who are kind of in the trenches with you. And
Mhm.
I would say that in order to not tip over, not do too much, you have to kind of have this internal sense that I'm not exactly sure where it comes from, but that that you're good.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, my coaches always said that I was really coachable,
Mhm.
meaning that, like, not only did I have a kinesthetic sense of like, get your elbow up and right, I could do it, but also, I just could get yelled at, or I could, like, I didn't take it personally. It never occurred to me that what they were saying was you're not good enough to make
Mhm.
it, right?
Yeah.
And even if they said those explicit words, they didn't. But right, that, like, to have that sort of internal sense, and it really took a while in that transition from swimming to the
Mhm.
next phase of my life. Like, you've got to get another 10,000 hours at something else
Yeah.
in order to have that same sense of I'm really good. in
Yeah.
what I do, and I want to get better. Like before this started, I was just asking Summer, like, "Oh, you've seen my other podcast. What could I do to be better?" And she was of course gracious and said, like, nothing. We want this to be an open and honest conversation. So
Yeah.
anyway, but my point is, in order to be to get the best out of your coach and to your teammates and everything else, is sort of having that internal sense, or taking a stand for yourself even when maybe the results aren't there, and then and showing up and doing the work every day and not missing practice, and all the things you were saying earlier about making sure that you're eating healthy, making sure that you're getting enough rest, making sure that you're stretching, making, right? All that stuff you need to, um, that all, it's all a gestalt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As an athlete, and I mean even in your professional life, you have to have this level of self-confidence in order to perform at the level that you want. I mean, if you get on the block and you feel as though you may not have a best time, then it's going to be even harder to get a best time because you're already stepping up kind of at a disadvantage internally. And that does transition, especially when you finish competing in swimming. I know I had a very difficult time kind of figuring out who I was outside of the sport. And every athlete I talk to is the same way. It's like you finish
Every,
one thing. Yeah. And I had no idea how difficult it was going to be. I had no idea what was even coming my way when I stopped swimming. But it is that sense of you put in these 10,000 hours in the pool, and all of a sudden you feel as though you're starting from square one, starting almost behind,
yeah.
but you're not, because you still have all of those skills, all of those habits, all of those traits that you learned from swimming. It's just you have to relearn the confidence and realize that you still have those to apply to whatever life throws your way next.
So Summer, tell me, did you have a job before you graduated from college outside of swimming? Did you work professionally?
When I was in grad school, I was a manager for the men's team at the University of Florida. So it was, but it also tied back into swimming to where I could still have that experience and relate my career to the sport. So yes and no.
Yes, and okay, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I had never had a job. I mean,
Mhm.
a real job.
Yeah.
I mean, I had, right, done, you know, pickup stuff. But um, so even like, writing thank you notes and just like the little things that most people professionally would take for granted, for me. And again, if there's one sort of running through my life, is just having really good mentors
Mhm.
who saw a lot more in me than I did in myself, that could help that transition. But
Yeah.
everybody struggles with that transition.
Yes.
Everybody does.
No,
So,
it's
and
yeah.
what I encourage people to, be willing, understanding you're going to have to put in 10,000 hours into something else. I tried for 4 years to be a commentator. I wanted to be just like Donna Deverona. That's what I wanted to do, television. And I was terrible at it, and I didn't like it, and I didn't care who won. And I look at the difference. Rowdy Gaines and we won the same medals at the 1984 Olympics.
Mhm.
And he is so perfect for it.
Yeah.
But like, look, it's taken him a while to really get to be as good as he is.
Mhm.
And you have to kind of care. And what I saw was that I didn't care, right? So it's okay to go from that, and go into other things.
Yes, absolutely. It's okay to try things out. I mean, it's okay to find a job. You think it might be the one that you like, try it. If it's not speaking to you, it's okay to try something else. I mean, I went through several career changes when I graduated from my master's degree, and I don't regret a single one of them because each one kind of led me to the path where I was like, okay, like I picked up something that I like from that, but this wasn't quite working for me. And it is so important to be passionate about the work that you're doing because then your work becomes better and you're helping those around you as well. And when you finished swimming, and even when you were a swimmer, you were huge within advocacy for gender equality and for women in sports in general, not just in swimming. So, how did you first get involved in advocating for gender equality in sports, and what were your first steps into the important work that you're doing today?
Um, so, oh, I'm just loving this summer. Thank you so much. So I had already been a feminist. I already had gotten a lot of messages. Like I needed Alana Marr back in 1977 when like these great big guys would say to me, "Oh, I wouldn't want to be stuck in a dark alley with you." And I mean, like you saw the guy, your brother. I mean, the guys on the team are 50 pounds more. I mean, if you Google Nancy Hogshead muscle, I was, really muscular, much more so than my peers. And I used to get beaten on the regular by Tracy Calkins, who's now
Mhm.
Tracy Stockwell. And Tracy weighed 30 pounds less than I did. And I want to like thank the universe for the day that we took a body fat percentage test because I was only 11%
Yeah.
and she was 22%. So Tracy could not, we're the same height, 5'10". Tracy could not lose any weight. I could not lose any weight, but
Mhm.
there wasn't the same recognition that there is today of, just sort of accepting body types as being really different,
Mhm.
and still really successful. Because I used to try to get down to, and then like I would miss my period, and then,
Yep.
you get that red S slash, female athlete triad, and that's not fun. So it did not make me go faster.
Yeah.
I really wasn't able to go below, say, 150 pounds without getting essentially sick.
Before we continue, just a reminder that this section of the interview does include talks of sexual violence. Please skip ahead to the 31-minute mark if you would prefer to avoid this part of the conversation.
So I was well aware of how women were getting treated differently than men were,
Mhm.
and how there was more acclaim for the men, even though we went to the same competitions and same meets and everything else. I was aware of that. But what really sort of cemented my life future was when I was in college. I was raped. Duke has two campuses, East and West, and I was just on an afternoon run in there, and I say this great big guy, but really he's just a guy. He's just a 200-pound. Like, how much does your brother weigh?
Like 190, I want to say.
Oh, one. Okay, so
Yeah.
like roughly around there, like 6 feet tall, like and I have to say that the fight wasn't even close.
Mhm.
That he was could overpower me so much, even though, I mean, I was a year out from just having made the 1980 Olympic team and was still on the national team, and a very, very elite athlete. And so I had 2.5 hours, and it was like a master class in how to become a feminist because of all the things that he would say to me. And even though he beat me up, he would say, this isn't rape. This is just you and me having a little fun. This it was So I went after he was done. I started to cry, and that's what got him to leave. And I flagged somebody down from the street to take me to the police station, which was just really just 2.5 blocks away or so. And the police were really kind to me and really nice. And I think of like the feminists who went before me, or I think of the if I had been in a Muslim country and it would have been blamed on me.
Mhm.
And even though I was beaten and whatnot, right? I'm so grateful for the generation above me and all of the kindness and all of the attention that was shown to me, um, because number one, I fit a very narrow set of circumstances. But if I had just been a few years older, I would not have gotten a college scholarship. I don't think people would have understood the impact of rape. At that time, the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress, it was not, right. So nobody kind of knew what it was. And yet the school knew what it was, and they were empathetic, and they were not judging and scolding, like, why didn't you get that assignment in, or
Yeah.
whatnot. So I got so much TLC, and at the same time, I really wanted a world in which rape didn't exist. I really wanted a world in which men and women were seen as equal human beings. And that's what we need for the right to vote, the right to own property, and, to have our own business and banking and everything else, is to be our own people. And just that sort of that respect. So I knew that was a major motivating force for me. And I just thought that through sport was the best way that I could make it better for other women, right? So I could have just worked for National Organization for Women, or, lots of other places. And again, great mentors, Donna Deverona, Donna Lopiano, who I still, well, now I guess we're peers, but, she was my mentor for a long time. She was the athletic director at University of Texas. Then she was the CEO at the Women's Sports Foundation. And now,
Wow.
yeah, she does all kinds of great stuff. So, um, um, I encourage everybody out there to seek people who are better than you are. My mom, even again, was not into swimming, but she would tell all of us. My brother went to Harvard. He was a rower there. My sister also went to Duke, but she would say, on the regular, you want to aspire to be the dumbest person in the room.
Mhm.
So it wasn't that we were dumb. It was that, she's saying, like, the way to get yourself where you want to go is to hang out with people who are better than you are. And so the way you do that is you go to the University of Florida, if that's, or wherever, we had to a great school, right?
Yeah.
Or you put yourself in those positions. So when I was at the Olympics, Donna Deverona talked to us. There was a bad United States Supreme Court decision called Grove City versus Bell, which held that the part of the school that got the federal funds, they couldn't discriminate, but the other parts, like the athletic department or maybe housing or all these, they could go discriminate. All that Title IX didn't apply. So we got Title IX, we got it reinstated, and as well Title VI, that bars discrimination on race, color, national origin, and the Rehabilitation Act, which deals with ability. So we got all these had to get it. So if a school gets federal funds, they have to agree not to discriminate based on sex. So that's kind of right. The sort of the issue, or what was going on, it didn't happen. We couldn't get it done until 1988.
Yeah.
But, like, right, I had already moved on to the board of the Women's Sports Foundation. And I think I'm trying to think, like, when I was an officer. But when I became president, I was the fourth president of the Women's Sports Foundation. I was easily the youngest person by 15, 20 years to hold that office. And I mean, I could not have had better cheerleaders, of a whole team of people sort of, pushing, of trying to get, making sure the law stayed strong, and then making sure that girls and women had those opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely incredible. Especially, I mean, my parents kind of said the same thing to me. They're like, you want to be in a room and you want to learn from those who came before you and who are around you. And so having mentors and people that you look up to when you're an athlete, when you're in your professional life, or I mean, even your personal life, you want to hang around people that are going to make you better. And you often find that those people, they know the work that has to be put in to get to where they are. So they are your biggest cheerleaders. And it's so important to have people like that behind you that are there cheering you on and not expecting anything in return. They're just there to make the world a better place, to make sport a better place, to make everyone's experience on this earth a better place.
Well, I mean, they did expect things in
Yeah.
return. Like I have told this story before about working with Donna Lopiano back. So I was pregnant with twins,
Mm.
and it was a tiring, exhausting pregnancy. And yet, the wrestlers at the time were hostile to women in Title IX. They thought that they would have more sports opportunities if Title IX went away, even though we had the data to show that's not true. And but anyway, so we had to come up with a paper this one particular time. So I was working with Donna Lopiano, and she says, okay, Nancy, you work until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll take it from there, and we'll da 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 da, and then when you get into the office at 9 a.m., then we'll make the final edits. I was like, I am pregnant with twins, right? She had no empathy. She was like Randy Reese.
Yeah.
Right? And we talked about that. There's the House settlement coming up on April 7th. And the House litigation has to do with antitrust litigation, but it's going to impact all of sport. And she was talking about how that, like, the people that were helping her with the position statement and how to talk to the court and whatnot were she's like, you can't just be dedicated, you also have to have a work ethic. So she's not doing it for money or applause or esteem or place in history or anything like that. She already has all that, but you got to have the work ethic to put it in to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, one more thing you said was, making sure, people who want you to succeed and whatnot, to have people who are authentic cheerleaders and aren't jealous of you.
Yeah.
I think like in sport, there's always a little bit of jealousy in our relationships. I mean, I was very jealous of Tracy Calkins, now
Yeah.
Tracy Stockwell. And even though I was crazy about her, and she was my roommate, and we were dear, dear, dear friends, right? But to find where people are so authentically happy for you when you achieve something, and somebody who will, right? That
Yeah.
part of being a good coach or a good teammate is that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's realizing that someone else's successes don't necessarily impede on your own. You
Exactly.
can cheer them on and still have your own successes and have it, as you said, be authentic. But I mean, those relationships are the ones that you carry with you long beyond sport, and they're the people that you call when you need something maybe unrelated to what you're working on. And you are the president, CEO, founder of Champion Women. Can you talk a little bit about your organization and some of the initiatives that you're currently working on?
Sure. So Champion Women is a nonprofit that we are kind of the intersection of, sexism and sports. So whether or not it's pregnancy discrimination or sexual abuse or not being given the same opportunities or, the same scholarship dollars or whatnot, that's where we are. If it is that intersection, then that's what I'm interested in. One thing I'm proud of about Champion Women, as opposed to other groups, is that we are not afraid to speak truth to power.
Hmm.
So we're not afraid to say, hey, schools, you're discriminating against women. So North Carolina State, University of Florida, Florida State are terribly discriminating against women in their athletic department. So we created a website called Title IX Schools, TITLEIX schools.com, that we took all the data from the Equity in Athletics Disclosure Act, and we turned it into something you can search for your school, and you can get the numbers, three numbers that are important to see are men and women getting treated the same way. One is numbers of opportunities. Does 1 in 10 men have X number of opportunities and 1 in 10 women, right? So we crunch those numbers and say, how many sports opportunities does this school need to add in order to be giving the same?
Mm-hmm.
So we do that you give you that number. And then two is scholarship dollars.
Yeah.
That if you had equality in opportunities, then what would the scholarship gap be? And there are plenty of schools out there that are well over $8 million a year, every year. One of the worst over and over again is UNC Chapel Hill. Maybe, I'm guessing, 15 years ago, when a new person came onto the NCAA, they eliminated a review process that required schools to show that they were either moving towards or they were treating men and women equally.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Emmert came on board and eliminated it. So what that meant was that the swim coach at whatever school had no direct line with the president of the university. And so a lot of times the president has no idea what's going on, or they're kind of leave it over to the athletic director. And the athletic director is typically financially incentivized by the men's football and basketball teams. Yeah. And so that's what they focus on. And so women's teams are sort of a distraction for them. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame. So right now, in theory, there are two remedies. One is going to the Department of Education and saying, making a complaint and saying what that is. And then two is litigation, or at least the threat of litigation. Mm-hmm. Title IX and gender equity in athletics is one of the few places where it's if I wanted to be a practicing lawyer, it's just so easy. It's kind of boring because, what are you giving the men? What are you giving the women?
Yeah,
it really is that easy. A lot of people, women in particular, they have to justify to themselves, like, why aren't I getting the same thing that the men are getting? Mm-hmm. And so they think, well, it must be a donor, or the football team's making money for the school, or the ticket sales, or they think there must be a reason. And the answer is there is no reason. That none of outside funding sources are a defense to sex discrimination. Yeah. The school's always on the hook for making sure that the end result is that women and men get treated equally. Mm-hmm. So so Champion Women, we filed 101 discrimination complaints, and some of them are 50 some pages, and we kept making them better. So we kept giving them more information, like beautiful graphs that say, here's what they've done over time. And, then saying what the percentage is. So, schools need to give women 52% more athletic opportunities as a whole, right? Some more, some less, right? As a whole, 52% more.
Jeez.
I mean, when you think of what sports participation for both men and women, but women in particular, what it gives them the rest of their lives is more money, mm-hmm. more education, better health, less osteoporosis, healthier pregnancies, right? It's a very good investment in our tax dollars to give women lots and lots of opportunities. For them to be denying women, they should be getting 52% more, mm-hmm. and they should be getting 71% more athletic scholarship dollars. 71%. So we filed these complaints, and the Biden administration didn't do anything about it. And I still don't know why. Mm-hmm. So, we have to see on this administration whether or not they'll do anything about these enormous gaps that not just the athletes can see, but the entire student body can see how they're treating men and women differently. Um, so that's one way. And the other way is, again, is, private litigation. But that is one of the major things that we do. I just met with a group of a school where they dropped a swimming team. If you go onto our website, you can see when they tried to drop Dartmouth swimming, and they credit us for educating them on the law and what the remedies were, and kind of where how does somebody pay for the litigation. The answer is it's a statute that it's a fee shifting, meaning that the plaintiff's attorneys get, as long as they substantially prevail on the merits, then they get their fees from the other side, which encourages the other side to do the right thing. So in other words, you don't have to be wealthy in order to be able to bring one of these claims. You may know we've done a ton of work in the area of sexual abuse in sport. And I got my chops, unfortunately, because Mitch Ivey, who has now been banned from swimming, and when I understood the difference between what schools had to do regarding sexual abuse in schools versus the Olympic movement, it was these structural differences between the two that made all the difference on how safe women were. But so we created the United States Center for Safe Sport, made everybody in the Olympic movement a mandatory reporter. They couldn't do what they were doing with Mitch Ivey, which was to say, it's just not my problem.
Yeah.
That it's up to the parents to do something about it. It's up to the police to do something about it. But meanwhile, these coaches are going around the country and they're just abusing kids big time. You're actually just the perfect age, Summer. Did you notice any difference in about the year 2014 in, how the AAU or USA Swimming was addressing sexual abuse in sport? Surely, coaches, I hate to say this, but I'm quite sure you do, know coaches that were abusing their athletes?
Yeah. I can say, like, especially with the mandated reporter, so having that training and ensuring that all coaches and people that are in contact involved in the sport are mandatory reporters is huge. Because like you said, so many people, they just don't want to get involved because it's a process, but it's one that needs to be taken. And so like I can say that I have seen like huge changes, especially just going on the pool decks nowadays. It's a huge 180.
Good, good, good. Yeah, it used to be that the coaches went to strip clubs after a competition or a meet, or right, like that was their like letting off steam. Like that is so. And I've said repetitively, and Summer, I hope you'll repeat this as loudly as you can, but every 7-year-old should know that coaches shall not have romantic or sexual relationships with the athletes they coach, regardless of age or consent. So
Absolutely.
even if it's a 30-year-old athlete and they're consenting to have, they cannot do it the same way that you can't do it if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're a therapist, if you're a religious figure. It is a bright line rule that in my era, and tell me if it's different now, but in my era, coaches dated, quote unquote, dated. That's how it was languaged. It wasn't language like, yeah, they're sexually abusing them, right?
Yeah.
They said they were in a relationship. Is so
I
so
can
I
thankfully say I have not had any experiences where I'm aware of coaches having romantic relationships with their athletes. But I mean, it's the power dynamic that is huge there and that some people don't unfortunately recognize is as you said, no matter the age, no matter the expertise, no matter where they are in their career, it's the power dynamic is an immediately a line that does not be crossed.
Right, right. So in order to get culture change, I went to both trials for several years now, and in the past there was like a towel over every seat that said safe sport,
Hmm.
but they weren't training anybody. They weren't telling anybody, oh, and here are the new rules, and here's who you call, and here's who's a mandatory report, right? It was a towel that said
Yeah.
safe sport on it, right? But nobody really knew what to do. You may know that I'm being sued right now for $250 million by a volleyball coach who abused three of his athletes, at least three. We actually know of more. So again, two sports systems, the school system and the Olympic system, like USA Swimming. And this guy's banned by Safe Sport, USA Volleyball, Junior Volleyball Association, AAU, not allowed to be on Disney properties, and the schools didn't know it. So he was coaching. They have these huge warehousey kind of things, and it's
Yeah.
$400, what roughly per kid to go and have these summer clinics, summer
Hmm.
camps, and um, and so they didn't know that this athlete was, you can go on to, right? So they're mad. They're saying, I'm being sued because we quote unquote tortiously interfered with his business relationships. Well, we interfered with his business relationships, and that was the absolute goal of what we were doing, but it
Yeah.
wasn't tortious. I have free speech, the right to say what's true,
Hmm.
what's factual. If I had exaggerated or if I had said, untrue things, that would be different. But I and I I'm a lawyer, right? I attached all the original source material to the thing, but now it's been going on for 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Legal fees are around 500,000. Um, and I am not going to settle
Yeah.
because I want the case law to support advocates like myself to be able to say this person should not be in coaching.
Hmm.
And you're taking a risk if you put your kid in that situation, or
Yeah.
the head of your team, or allowed in your league, or allowed to coach a summer. That is a risk of harm to other kids.
Yeah. No, I was not aware of that. And that's, I'm speechless even just hearing about that. And I mean, I know earlier in our conversation you mentioned Title IX and the percentages of discrepancies that are still out there. I had no idea. I mean, as an athlete, you're taught Title IX, yeah, women and men's sports are treated equally, and you kind of think that's the end of it. You think that everyone's abiding by it. So to hear that so many institutions, so many schools, and that we are still that far behind, I mean, I was not even aware of that. So that's absurd and crazy and
Right,
also
right. And yeah,
shows.
I mean, yeah, Summer, you're about as sophisticated as you're going to find. So you're that sophisticated and you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So send everybody to go to our website.
Absolutely.
So a lot, particularly in swimming and track and field, right? We have the same coaches, the same facilities, the same, right? It's really not such a big difference. But are the women swimmers getting the same PR or the same support that the men's football and basketball players are getting? And they should be. Are they getting, I mean, the biggest gap between men and women is recruiting dollars.
Yeah.
And recruiting, if you don't have recruiting dollars, who does that hurt? Are the athletes themselves, because it shifts the cost from the school over to the family to get recruited. So swimming and track and field are pretty, they've got these objective metrics, but soccer and in rugby and softball, they don't have those. So the coach has got to actually see what the skill set is, and is it going
Yeah.
to work with the team, and what position, and can I train them up, blah blah blah. So so the that means that the family then has to go, and they go to these things called ID camps,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
the women typically pay between $250, $350 to go to one of these camps. And it's a source of revenue then for the school. And the men pay like 50 or nothing.
Oh, wow.
They get somebody recruiting them. It really hurts women coaches
Yeah.
or coaches of women athletes, right? Because if they don't have the recruiting dollars, and they can't make a good social media presence,
Hmm.
right? Then they're not going to win. And winning is how you move up through the
Yeah.
ladder.
And those
So,
opportunities. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, throughout this conversation, I mean, you're opening up my eyes to things that I was not even aware of in sport. And as I mentioned earlier, I got my degree in sport management with a specialization of athlete development. And I think we're doing a disservice not teaching this within those courses as well, because, I specialized in sport within my schooling, and I was not even aware of all of these things that are out there.
So, do we even know what the Equity in Athletics Disclosure Act is?
I do not know the
See?
specifics.
Right. I swear to you, and I'm not a crazy person, but I really do think it is a conspiracy not to tell students what their rights are. So the I have talked to, these big groups of students, and usually some crisis is happening,
Hmm.
and then they get to see all the other stuff that's going on as well. But some of the best schools in the country, and these athletes have no idea. So, Summer, anything that you can do
Yeah.
to to let athletes know what their rights are. I mean, they really need to know what their rights are for pregnancy.
Yeah.
They really need to know what their rights are. Their rights are under Title IX if they are sexually assaulted.
Hmm.
Whether or not somebody believes them, they should be believed. But um, they and every athlete should know what their rights are. After I finish talking, it is not at all uncommon to have the athletes, like it's on a Zoom call, and I'm talking to 50, 100, and to have them like they're silent on the other end. They're like, I mean, it's so like right.
Yeah.
They want new bleachers or something fairly small, and they're like, how can we have a PR campaign, and what can we do to get the right? And we're like, okay, you're way thinking small,
Yeah.
and like you don't have to raise the money. The
Mhm.
school has the obligation to treat you equally with whatever they're doing with the men.
Yeah.
It's even hard, I'll tell you. So you remember we filed these 101 complaints, and so one of the things that we have in there is all the pictures of here's the men's facilities, here are the women's facilities. Can I tell you, it is really easy to find pictures of what the men's facilities look like. It
Yeah.
is not easy just to find out what do the women's locker rooms look like? What do their training rooms look like? What are their even like just like something basic, like what does your softball field look like?
Yeah.
They have all these pictures of like, women and girls, like, and it's very cropped, it's very close knit, as opposed to um, seeing what the whole facility looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to learn with Chat GPT. Maybe they can find pictures better than we can, but we have to literally spend thousands of dollars just to get those pictures, just to have our research assistants like get online and find them, because a picture says 1,000 words. And if we can show the Department of Education, how profound these differences are, it, it'll hopefully make a
Yeah.
big difference.
You have my gears turning because of all of the recruiting trips that I took when I was being recruited to swim and when I was transferring, looking at like our facilities and our locker rooms compared to those of other sports or of the men's team. I mean, my gears are turning now to things that at the time you don't even think about because you're just so grateful to be on the campus. And now you look back and you're like, I shouldn't have been as gracious as I maybe was at the time. And what do
No,
you,
it's part of sexism or misogyny generally
yeah,
that women are taught that they are supposed to be grateful.
yes.
And you can be grateful at the same time demand equality,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm grateful to be a lawyer and I want to get paid the same as my male counterpart here.
Yeah.
That's there's nothing, you can be both.
Yes, absolutely. And just one last question. What do you hope to see for the future of women's sports in the next 5 to 10 years? And what specific changes or milestones do you think are achievable? And how can we, the listeners, help?
So that's a good question. I mean, so champion women, as I told you, we focused on sexual abuse, equal opportunities, and we also focus on women's sports for women. I'm
Mhm.
really hoping that in just the next 5 years that we get that issue handled, that just like the 120-pound weight class, that if you are 1 ounce over the 120 weight pound, you do not qualify to be in that category. And it's the same thing with women's sports. Our swimming community, Summer, you would be so proud of us and how quickly we responded to the Leah Thomas situation and getting the NCAA to change, getting USA Swimming and getting World Aquatics to change. I mean, it was, and I think it's because we train together that, right, there's a mutual respect that we understand the enormous gaps between men's and women's, like why we sex segregate, right? We don't sex segregate in very many spaces, but I'm really hoping that one's over. Because as a Democrat, as somebody who's liberal and who's been fighting for women only spaces, and then to be called, that I'm hateful, that I'm a bigot, that I'm to literally get death threats, to having to explain, boy, you know how I just had to explain to you about the big differences in men's and women's sports.
Yeah.
And if people who are not in sports think it, maybe it's cultural that women don't swim as fast as men do. And I'm like, that, okay, only somebody who's not in sports. And it's also frankly insulting to me. It's
Yeah.
insulting to you. Like,
Yeah.
Kelly Summer, you were not as fast as your brother just because you were not given the same coaching and facilities and support, and that maybe there's a whole nother class of women out there that if there was gender equality throughout society that it would be equal. It's absurd.
Yeah.
So right, I just want that one to be over. um I can't tell you how much, money and effort that we've spent trying to make to keep the women's sports for females.
Mhm.
When I was swimming, I had to do a cheek swab test. By the time you came around, they stopped it. The cheek swab or a spit test is how you do sex testing, whether
Okay.
or not somebody has the Y chromosome or the SRY gene
Mhm.
that makes for the divergence in whether or not somebody biologically, do they grow up to be, is their biology focused around making large gametes or small gametes? Are they biologically organized around, whether or not they do or not is irrelevant, but biologically throughout all of humanity, there those um, that distinguishing we do have we don't have racial segregation. Okay, so we don't have formal racial segregation. We don't say, we say anybody can sit at the Walgreens lunch counter, anybody can show up to compete in sports, but we do have formal sex segregation that is acceptable by the courts, etc. And it's because of these enormous biological differences.
Mm-hmm.
So I want that one. I want us to, have the same harshness, not harshness isn't the right word, but the same strictness for qualifying into the women's category as you do for any weight category, any age category. I want it to be the same strictness that is the drug testing that goes on. People talk about it's an invasion of privacy to do sex testing. Were you sex tested, Summer?
I was not.
So let me tell you, somebody knocks on your door, perfect stranger, and they say, here's a cup. Now spread your legs and let me watch you pee. That's what women and men all over the world do for drug testing.
Mm-hmm.
And who wants that the most are athletes. They don't want to have to use drugs. They don't want to feel like it's an unfair playing field. That's intrusive. And we do it and nobody questions, like, is it too intrusive? No, because cheaters will inject themselves with urine. That's why they have to watch it. That's why it's got to be the right temperature. It's got to have the right pH, blah, blah, blah. And again, it is athletes that want this. When you talk to women and ask them, do you want a cheek? In our day, it was a cheek swab.
Mm-hmm.
You want the cheek swab test? In my day, they wanted it. So I want that. Number two is I want to figure out other ways of how do you get equality in sports without having it relying just on the 18 to 22-year-olds, to have there be another mechanism to maybe make it's either the NCAA or Department of Justice. I'm not exactly sure yet, but to have that happen, and the whole issue of sexual abuse in sport is a power issue. Mm-hmm. If athletes had equal power in sport, you would see a lot less abuse.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like I said, there's been so many things that I've learned within our conversation together and things that I know that I can do better and educate myself on to also educate others on. So hopefully some of our viewers or those who are listening will also be spoken to and called to act in that light. And for myself and also athletes everywhere, just a big thank you for your time in the water and also all that you continue to do to fight for us in the future as well.
Thank you, Summer. It was a real pleasure to get to be on here, and I wish you every success.
Thank you. Well, guys, that is a wrap on this week's episode. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation just as much as I did. I know Nancy opened my eyes to a lot of the disparities that are still continuing to happen, even within collegiate athletics. A huge thank you to Nancy for coming on and sharing her story and her journey and what she's still continuing to do to fight for equity in sport. Please check out her websites. I will list them here. If you liked this week's episode, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Follow us on social media. All of our links will be here. A huge thank you to the International Swim Coaches Association and also Swimming World Magazine. Without their support, this podcast would not be possible. Stay tuned for future conversations, and I will catch you all next time.